The morning sun painted the stones of the Roman Forum golden when Marcus Flavius adjusted his toga candida for the third time, that immaculate white linen garment that proclaimed his candidacy for the Senate. His fingers trembled slightly, not from political nervousness, but from something much deeper and more dangerous. If you've ever wondered how traditions shape our lives in unimaginable ways, this story will reveal secrets that few know about the power of colors in ancient Rome. At the bathhouse near the Circus Maximus, hot steam rose from the thermal waters, while Marcus discreetly observed the other bathers. There, Roman social hierarchy showed itself crystalline through the garments left on the marble benches. The togas with purple borders of the senators contrasted with the simple tunics of the plebeians, but it was the complete absence of certain color combinations that truly caught the attention of those who knew Rome's unwritten laws. "Marcus, my young friend," the grave voice of Gaius Cornelius echoed through the marble walls. The old senator, with his perfectly combed gray hair, approached with the dignity that only decades of political power could confer. "I see you chose white for today. Wise, very wise. Senator Cornelius," Marcus bowed respectfully. "Tradition demands visual purity from those who seek to serve Rome." The senator smiled, but his eyes remained serious. "Tradition. An interesting word. Do you know why we never see a respectable Roman mixing blue with red in their garments? Or why certain combinations are considered not just inadequate, but dangerous to the social order?" Marcus hesitated. He knew the rules like every Roman citizen, but had never questioned their origins. "I believe it's a matter of decorum, sir." "Decorum," Cornelius repeated, savoring the word. A diplomatic answer, but incomplete. "Come, walk with me through the streets. There are lessons that only observation can teach." Leaving the baths, the two men walked along the Via Appia, where Rome's morning movement unfolded in all its complexity. Slaves dressed in earth brown carried amphorae, their clothes purposely neutral so as not to offend citizens' sight. Merchants displayed tunics in earthy tones, ochre, beige, light brown, colors that indicated their position in society without challenging established norms. "Observe that group of women." Cornelius pointed discreetly to a set of matrons heading to the market. "See how each uses only one dominant color? The praetor's wife in deep blue, the quaestors in olive green, the aediles in saffron yellow. Never two vibrant colors together, never combinations that might suggest impropriety." Marcus frowned. "Impropriety, sir? My young Marcus, in Rome appearance is not mere vanity, it's communication. Each color tells a story, declares a position, affirms a loyalty. And certain combinations," the senator lowered his voice, "certain combinations tell stories that Rome prefers not to hear." They stopped before a tavern where a group of veteran soldiers shared wine and war stories. All wore tunics in faded red or reddish-brown tones, colors that echoed military uniform without disrespecting regulations about civilian clothing. "See those men?" Cornelius continued. "They fought in Gaul, conquered territories for Rome. But even they, war heroes, follow the color rules. Why? Because they understood something fundamental. In Rome, rebellion begins with small gestures, and authorities learn to identify these gestures before they become dangerous." A shiver ran down Marcus's spine. He was beginning to understand that Roman clothing rules went far beyond aesthetics or tradition. "Senator, are you suggesting that color laws are a form of social control?" Cornelius completed without hesitation. "Exactly. When you can instantly identify a person's class, profession, political loyalty, and even intentions just by observing their clothes, you have a surveillance system more efficient than any network of spies." They arrived at the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, where priests officiated morning rituals. Their white garments gleamed under the sun, but Marcus noticed details that had previously escaped him. The golden borders indicating priestly hierarchy, the complete absence of any other color that could contaminate ritual purity. "The priests are the clearest example," Cornelius explained. "Pure white, without mixtures, without variations. It's not just religious devotion. It's visual demonstration that they are above human passions, political confusions, earthly ambitions. A convincing lie, but necessary to maintain order." "Lie?" Marcus whispered, looking around to make sure no one was listening. My young friend, do you really believe that high priest never felt enough anger to wear red, or enough envy to wear green, or enough lust to wear purple? Of course he did, but he learned to suppress these manifestations because he understood the power of controlled appearance. As they walked back to the city center, Cornelius revealed increasingly deeper layers of this Roman philosophy. See, Marcus, our ancestors discovered something fundamental about human nature. We are profoundly influenced by what we see. If we allowed people to mix colors freely, we would be allowing them to freely express their emotions, their desires, their dissatisfactions. And that would be dangerous, catastrophically dangerous for an empire. The senator responded gravely. Imagine if slaves began using color combinations that expressed their anger and desire for freedom. Imagine if soldiers mixed colors that suggested divided loyalties. Imagine if women used combinations that challenged their designated social position. Marcus began to see Rome with new eyes. The streets seemed like a giant chessboard, where each piece had its designated color and specific position. But, Senator, doesn't this make our society artificial? Cornelius stopped and faced Marcus directly. Artificial, perhaps, but also stable. Rome governs half the world because it developed order systems that work. Colors are just one tool, but a powerful tool. When they returned to the Forum, the movement had intensified. Marcus now perceived patterns that had previously been invisible to him. How groups naturally formed by similar colors, how people automatically deferred to those dressed in higher status colors, how the absence of certain combinations created visual harmony that translated into social harmony. There's one last lesson for today, said Cornelius, pointing to a corner where a young man in a blue tunic and red cloak was being discreetly followed by two vigils. That young man, consciously or not, is making a political statement. Blue and red together were the colors used by Julius Caesar's supporters in his final days. To those who know history, he's signaling Republican sympathies in an imperial era. And the vigiles? They'll follow him, discover who he associates with, what he does, where he lives. If it's just ignorance of the rules, he'll be educated. If it's conscious rebellion... Cornelius didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. The sun was high when they separated, but Marcus felt as if a veil had been removed from his eyes. Rome's colors weren't just tradition or aesthetics. They were language, control, power, and resistance, all coded in tones and combinations that most people followed instinctively without ever questioning. As he adjusted his white candidacy toga again, Marcus realized his political campaign would be more complex than he had imagined. It wasn't enough to win votes. He needed to navigate a sea of visual meanings where a single combination error could destroy a career or, worse still, a life. Rome's streets continued to pulse with life, but now Marcus saw each citizen as a bearer of a coded message, each garment as a political declaration, each color as a choice loaded with consequences. The Eternal City had revealed one of its deepest secrets, the power to control not just what people say, but how they present themselves to the world. 3 weeks had passed since the revealing conversation with Senator Cornelius, and Marcus Flavius now observed Rome with the insight of one who knows the hidden codes. His campaign for the Senate was progressing well, but an incident was about to shake his certainties about the Roman color system. The morning began with rain, something rare for the season, and the Forum stones reflected the gray sky when Marcus was approached by Lucius Valerius, a young fabric merchant whose face showed evident signs of despair. Marcus Flavius. Lucius approached hesitantly. I beg pardon for the direct approach, but I need your help. I heard you have influence with Senator Cornelius. Speak, Lucius. What afflicts you? The merchant looked around nervously before continuing. It's about my sister Claudia. She made a terrible mistake. Marcus felt a knot in his stomach. In recent days, he had learned that mistakes related to clothing in Rome were rarely simple matters of fashion. What kind of mistake? She appeared yesterday at the market wearing an emerald green stola with a royal blue cloak, two vibrant colors together, Marcus. People stopped to stare, began to whisper. Some women moved away from her as if she were contagious. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. Green and blue, a combination that evoked ancient Oriental cults, specifically the mysteries of Isis that Rome only marginally tolerated. Worse still, it was a combination historically associated with the most expensive courtesans, those who served the political elite and often knew dangerous secrets. Why did she do it? Ignorance. Lucius sighed heavily. Our father died recently, and she inherited some expensive fabrics. She thought only of using the most beautiful she had to honor his memory. She didn't know the implications. And now, the censors were informed. There are rumors they're going to investigate our entire family. Marcus, if they discover any irregularity in our business, any dubious association, any— Marcus interrupted with a gesture. He knew well the power of Roman censors, officials responsible not only for population census, but for public morality. A censorial investigation could destroy a family in a matter of days. Where is Claudia now? At home, hidden. She hasn't left for 2 days. The other women in the neighborhood stopped talking to her. Merchants refused to serve her. It's as if she's become invisible. Or worse, too visible. Marcus reflected quickly. He could try to intercede with Cornelius, but that would associate his name with a potential scandal right in the middle of his campaign. On the other hand, leaving Claudia to her own fate would be abandoning the principles he claimed to defend. Take me to her, he finally decided. The Valerius family house was in a middle-class neighborhood, where the buildings were simple but dignified. When Claudia appeared, Marcus immediately understood the magnitude of the problem. Even at home, wearing a simple white linen tunic, she carried an aura of unconscious defiance that had certainly attracted attention at the market. Claudia, Marcus greeted her respectfully, your brother told me about the situation. I need to understand exactly what happened. The young woman, about 25 years old, had intelligent eyes that shone with a mixture of fear and stubbornness. Sir Marcus, I just wore beautiful clothes to go to the market. I didn't know that was a crime. It's not a legal crime, Marcus explained patiently. But in Rome we have social crimes that can be equally devastating. Tell me about the fabrics. Claudia led them to a small chest where she kept her paternal inheritances. When she opened the lid, Marcus almost sighed. There were some of the most exquisite fabrics he had ever seen. Purple silk from Tyre, blue linen from Egypt, green wool from Asia Minor. Clearly Claudia's father had more prosperous businesses and broader connections than he publicly admitted. Your father never explained where these fabrics came from. He said they were gifts from grateful clients, Claudia replied, but her voice betrayed uncertainty. Lucius intervened. Marcus, our father traded with merchants from throughout the empire. Some of these fabrics may have come from complicated sources. Marcus understood. In Rome, having access to luxury fabrics from certain regions could imply associations with specific political groups, non-approved religious cults, or even activities on the edge of legality. Claudia, when you wore green with blue, did anyone make any specific comments? An elderly woman approached and whispered something about servants of Isis. I thought it was just gossip. And were there men watching? Yes. Some stopped talking when I passed. One of them, a middle-aged man with scars on his face, kept following me at a distance. Marcus felt a chill down his spine. A scarred man following a young woman dressed inappropriately. Probably an informant for the censors, or worse, the Praetorians. Lucius, I need to speak with Senator Cornelius immediately. Claudia, you don't leave home for the next few days. If anyone comes asking questions, be courteous, but don't reveal information about your father's business. The path to Cornelius's villa had never seemed so long. Marcus knew he was about to ask a favor that could compromise his own position, but something about Claudia's situation deeply troubled him. Cornelius received him in his tablinum, an elegant office decorated with busts of illustrious ancestors. When Marcus related the situation, the senator listened in silence, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the marble table. Green and blue, he finally murmured. A dangerous combination for an inexperienced young woman. Senator, she didn't know the implications. It was genuine ignorance. Marcus, my young friend, in Roman politics, ignorance is rarely an accepted excuse, but there's something more complex here. Cornelius stood and began walking around the office. You said she has luxury fabrics of uncertain origin? Yes, sir. And that a scarred man followed her? Exactly. Cornelius stopped and faced Marcus directly. This is no longer about violation of clothing codes. It's about state security. Marcus felt the ground move beneath his feet. How so? In recent months, We've been monitoring a network of merchants who may be financing subversive activities. Luxury fabrics are a common way to transfer value without leaving obvious monetary traces. If Claudia's father was involved, then she's being investigated as a possible conspirator. Possibly. And her public appearance wearing those specific colors may have been interpreted as a signal, a message to other network members. Marcus sat heavily. The situation was much worse than he had imagined. What can we do? Cornelius reflected for long moments. There's one possibility. If we can prove she really acted out of ignorance, and if she cooperates completely with authorities, revealing everything she knows about her father's business, maybe we can negotiate a discreet resolution. And if she doesn't know anything compromising, then we'll have to hope the authorities believe that. The rest of the day was a blur of discreet meetings and whispered conversations. Cornelius used his influence to arrange an informal meeting with one of the censors, Marcus Junius Brutus, a man known for his moral rigidity but also for his fairness. When they met in the late afternoon in Brutus's private office, the tension was palpable. The censor, an austere 50-year-old man, examined a scroll with notes about the Valerius family. "Senator Cornelius, candidate Flavius," Brutus greeted them formally. "I presume you're here to discuss the Valerius case." "We are, Censor Brutus," Cornelius replied. "We believe there's been a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Brutus raised an eyebrow. "A young woman appears in public wearing colors that signal association with Oriental cults and possible elite prostitution. During the same period, we're investigating subversive financing networks. And you call this a misunderstanding?" Marcus decided to intervene. "Censor Brutus, I met Claudia Valerius personally. She is genuinely ignorant about clothing codes. She acted out of grief for her father, not conspiracy. And would you stake your political reputation on that, young Flavius?" The question echoed in the office like thunder. Marcus realized he was at a defining moment of his career, and possibly his life. "Yes, Censor, I would stake it." Brutus studied Marcus for long moments, then looked at Cornelius. "And you, Senator? Do you also endorse this assessment?" "I endorse it, Censor." "Very well." Brutus leaned back in his chair. "Here's my proposal. Claudia Valerius will be subjected to complete interrogation about her father's business. If she cooperates completely and we find no evidence of conscious involvement in subversive activities, the case will be discreetly archived. She will receive adequate education about clothing codes and remain under discreet observation for 6 months. And if she refuses to cooperate, then we'll presume conscious guilt and the investigation will expand to the entire family, including possible asset confiscation and exile." Cornelius nodded solemnly. "Fair terms, Censor." When they left Brutus's office, Marcus felt simultaneously relieved and apprehensive. They had secured an opportunity for Claudia, but the price was high. His own reputation was now linked to the investigation's outcome. "Cornelius, thank you for using your influence." The senator placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "My young friend, you made a courageous decision today. Supporting someone in trouble always involves risks. I hope your assessment of Claudia is correct." "So do I," Marcus murmured. 3 days later, Claudia underwent interrogation. She revealed everything she knew about her father's business, which was in fact more complex than she had initially admitted, but within legal limits. The father had traded with merchants from border regions, acquiring rare fabrics through networks that operated on the margins of legality, but without direct involvement in subversive activities. The case was archived, but the repercussions extended far beyond the Valerius family. Marcus discovered that his willingness to defend an unpopular cause had impressed some voters, who saw in him a candidate with principles. Others, however, questioned his political judgment. When electoral results were announced, Marcus won his Senate seat by a narrow margin. In his first speech, he spoke about the importance of balancing tradition with justice, order with compassion. Claudia, in turn, became an involuntary example of the dangers of ignorance about social codes. Her story spread discreetly through Rome, serving as a warning to other families about the importance of understanding society's unwritten rules. Months later, when Marcus was already established in his senatorial position, Cornelius found him again at the baths. "Do you still believe you made the right choice with Claudia Valerius?" asked the veteran politician. Marcus reflected for a moment, observing the thermal waters where citizens of different social classes bathed, each respecting visual hierarchies established by centuries of tradition. I believe so, Senator. Rome is strong because of its traditions, but it also needs to be fair in their application. Claudia learned the rules the hard way, but maintained her dignity. And I learned that sometimes defending principles is worth more than ensuring political conveniences. A valuable lesson, Cornelius nodded. But always remember, in Rome, the colors we choose to wear don't just reflect who we are, they determine who we can become. As they left the baths, Marcus again observed Rome's streets. Colors continued to tell their silent stories, but now he understood that these stories could be both prisons and protections, both limitations and languages of power. The Roman Empire would endure for centuries, and its system of clothing codes would continue to shape behaviors, establish hierarchies, and maintain social order. But stories like Claudia Valerius's would show that even in the most rigid system, there would always be room for questioning, learning, and occasionally for mercy tempered by justice. Rome's colors had revealed their deepest secrets. They weren't just traditions or control tools, but reflections of a civilization's soul that sought to balance power and humanity, order and compassion, tradition and change. And in this delicate balance, each Roman citizen played their role, wearing not just colored fabrics, but the responsibilities and possibilities of one of history's greatest civilizations. For those who wish to know more fascinating stories about the secrets of the ancient world, continue following our journey through the mysteries that shaped our civilization. Rome's colors were just the beginning of a much more complex tapestry of traditions, powers, and human lives that continue to echo through the centuries.